On episode 737 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Eilene Kopsaftis and discuss her book, Aging Culprits: 12 Myths That Sabotage Your Future and Steal Your Joy. Welcome to the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, the largest and longest running health and fitness podcast dedicated to people over 40. Whether you're looking to lose weight, get stronger, or improve your health and age better, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Coach Allan, an online health and fitness coach and author of the Wellness Roadmap. Each week, we dive into practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and fitness. If you're ready to look, feel, and perform your best, no matter your age, this podcast is the perfect place to start. Let's get you on the path to a healthier, fitter, and more energetic version of yourself. I hope you'll join us each week, and together we can unlock your full potential. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Allan. I'm really glad you're here. This is going to be a really good conversation. If aging too fast is something you're not really interested in doing. So we'll just hop right on into it. When today's guest lost her two brothers in their 40s, one to cancer and the other to heart disease, she knew she had to do her all to keep others from the same tragedy. She has been practicing physical therapy since 1994. Her specialties are performing manual techniques to correct biomechanical dysfunction and asymmetry, and teaching people informed healthcare decision-making, as well as how to resolve pain using effective self-care methods. She is certified in applied functional science and diet and lifestyle intervention as an experienced MELT method instructor and a graduate of the Nutrition Education Program at Wellness Forum Institute for Health Studies. She speaks internationally, teaches community education classes, and serves as a faculty member and director of manual and movement education at the WFI for Health Studies. She also serves as president of the Cameo Ministries Advisory Board. She is a founder of the Cameo Ministries, which began in 1999 as a support group called Choose Freedom, which serves women who have experienced sexual abuse and abuse of any kind. She has co-led this weekly support group since its inception. With no further ado, here's Eilene Kopsaftis. Eilene, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Hello, Allan. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, the name of your book, Aging Culprits: 12 Myths That Sabotage Your Future and Steal Your Joy. This is an important book. It's not a long book. It's pretty compact, but this is the information. This is kind of the let's scrub away all the nonsense and let's just get to core things, because there are these myths that we have, and it's in many cases destroying the second half of our lives.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you say that it's a compact book. I was told by the publisher anything more than 200 pages, people won't take the time to read. So I do have extra information on a free website that is agingculprits.com. So if people want more information, they can go there, because I felt like I was kind of shortchanging people. But, some people want the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Some people want the detail.
My editor and I, we had a few conversations.
Yes.
And
Yes.
because again, it's that thing when you start talking about something, there's always the question, so someone's always going to ask the question. I just really wanted it there, so someone's going to ask about DOMs. If you start talking about resistance training, and so like, do you really need to have that in there? I'm like, yes, just this little little thing, and yes, it is going to take up, a little bit of a page. So maybe you say it's taking up a whole page, but it was just those little things, and we would get into those little squabbles, everyone, because again, they wanted it less, they wanted fewer words, and so it was a fight. I've had guests on this show that have had books as long as 700 words, and they needed every one of those words. So they weren't wasted words, but these are very important. And one of the reasons I say that is because I've just seen so many examples of age just robbing people. And it's not really that the age robbed them. They kind of did it to themselves without knowing they did it to themselves because we lived the way everybody else did. And I think you said it in the book. You said just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal.
Correct. Yes, yes. And it's funny because I've worked in pretty much every setting there is, showing my age. But in the nursing home, nobody set a goal to go there. Nobody wanted to be there. Nobody expected to be there, but they ended up there. And it's really kind of by default. Like you said, we sort of end up this way, but it's, yes, we're living like everybody else, but we've also been fed this narrative that we're supposed to decline, that we're supposed to get weaker, we're supposed to lose our balance, we're supposed to have incontinence, we're supposed to lose bone density, we're supposed to lose lean muscle mass. And it's all not true because the biology of the human body doesn't follow that. And it doesn't matter how old you are. And I've worked with people over 100 years old and had them doing squats and parallel bars. So, I've seen it. The age is not the issue. Age is not the enemy. It's what we believe about age that's the enemy.
Now, in the book, you taught me a new word, and I don't know if something is a word because people are using it, or it has to go into Webster, or who actually gets to say what a word is. But it's in the Urban Dictionary at the very least, and it's called.
Yes, and if it's Urban Dictionary, we know it's kind of new.
Yeah, it's kind of new, but we're using it. People are using it. It was in a book that makes it real. Substition.
Yes.
Can you talk about that and how that's similar to,
Yeah.
it's different than, but kind of around like what we would call superstition?
Right. Well, it's actually kind of the opposite because superstition is people believing things that aren't true. Like, if a black cat crosses in front of you, you're going to have bad luck, these kind of things. And I don't mean any offense to anybody who believes that, but that is a superstition. It's not really based on truth, yet a lot of people believe it. And what I've found for most of my life, really, even before my professional career, I have been drawn to things that were true, but most people don't believe them. So that's substition, believing in something that's true, but a lot of people don't believe it is.
So one of the core myths that you brought up, and I think this is kind of where the rubber hits the road for all of this, is that decline is imminent. We're just going to get old and die. And yes, death is imminent, but decline, at least the way most people decline, it doesn't have to be the way it works.
No, it doesn't. I've seen people in their 80s who needed help to get out of a chair, do the right work the right way, and get out of the chair like a shot, leg pressing 200 pounds. So I've seen it. And again, as I said, human biology on a cellular level, it does not matter how old you are. If you're still breathing and you're not battling some life-ending disease and you're bedridden, your body can get stronger. Your muscle cells will grow. Your bone cells can get, your bones can get denser. You can, so many things can be improved. It doesn't matter how old you are. And you don't have to let the decline happen. There are ways to maintain independence and quality of life. I mean, I'm 67. I take no meds. I don't even have Tylenol in my medicine chest. I'm not an outlier. I'm not abnormal. I'm what we would call uncommonly normal. And I know a lot of people who are.
Yeah, because the interesting thing is, and I've heard this before. It's like we don't have a medication. What's it called? I'm drawing a blank on the word, but when you don't have the vitamins you need, you've got a deficiency. we don't have a medication deficiency.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so many people, and it's odd because it's like they're not on one medication, they're on 5 or 9, or they just keep adding to them, and there's never a plan to go off of them.
And it's interesting that you say this because I remember back when I've got kids who are, almost 50. And one of them, she had a school report she had to write about what was in our medicine chest because they were learning that medications can be expired and they should be gotten rid of safely and all this other stuff. And so she wrote a report that we didn't have any medications in the medicine chest. I mean, I had white willow bark instead of aspirin. It's not a medication. And so it was so funny. Her teacher, I actually had to call her teacher and say, she's not lying. She didn't not want to do the report. I can take a picture of my medicine chest if you'd like, but there's no medications in there. It's so abnormal to not use them. People don't even know what that's like most of the time. Yeah.
And, we kind of bounced into the second myth I wanted to get into because, like I said, all these they're generally related. We start declining, we start having symptoms, and the medications then apply to those symptoms. And sometimes the problem with the medication is that it's then going to cause another problem that you now will get another medication for. And sometimes you stop the medication because it was only temporary, but you don't stop the medication for the symptom that was created by the medication. What's going on here?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, to use the $1,000,000 words, and that's why we use a lot of big words in the medical profession, so we can charge people more money. But we're medically manipulating blood biomarkers. So basically, like you said, we're treating the symptom, and yet we're not addressing the cause. So a simple example is high blood pressure. If someone has high blood pressure, typically it's because they have impaired circulation. And we've got all these little tiny cells, they're called endothelial cells, they line all the blood vessels, and those cells can be injured. And when those cells get injured, they don't produce enough of something called nitric oxide, which dilates or opens up the circulation and gives us really good blood flow everywhere. So when somebody has high blood pressure, it means those cells have been injured. Now, the medications for high blood pressure manipulate the system. It's those medications are not healing those cells. Those medications are not improving the health of your circulation. And there are a lot of people, and I know some people personally, who were given really good reports at the doctor's office. And this isn't meant to scare anyone. This is meant to inform people so they can make better decisions and start asking questions. But a lot of people end up suddenly dying after being told by their doctor that all their blood work looks great. And it can happen within 6 months of those visits, sometimes sooner. And I know people that has happened to. The doctor said, oh, keep doing what you're doing. Everything looks great. Because all the numbers have been manipulated by medications. But they haven't addressed the underlying cause of the disease.
So that's an important question.
Yeah,
that you need to be asking your doctor.
You want to ask, okay, what are my risks
this?
when I take this? What are my benefits? And a lot of medications that when you look at the data, it only reduces your risk by a tiny amount. And then a lot of the times the numbers are manipulated because there's something called relative risk reduction versus absolute risk reduction. Absolute is real math. 4 minus 2 equals 2. Relative is, 4 and 2. 2 is only half of 4, so that means it reduces your risk by 50%. But no, the real math says 2. So, things look better on paper, but real life, it's not really reducing our risks of those events that we don't want to experience.
Yeah.
The things that really do work is changing how we nourish our body, changing how we take care of ourselves. We have to know this in order to make better decisions and have improved outcomes.
And so that would be one of the cores is you may need the medication temporarily. High blood pressure is not something to play around with, but you should have a plan.
Yes.
With your doctors, like, what do I need? Why is this happening? what can I do besides the medication at any point so I can eventually get off of this medication? So you're not
Yes, and you
finding,
should never stop a medication without medical supervision.
yeah,
But yes,
because
yes.
sometimes there are adverse effects for jumping off of
Hmm.
something that you don't want to deal with either. So
Yeah.
you do need a plan, and I think that's kind of one of the cores. They talk to a lot of people, and like, okay, every time they tell me they want something, I'm like, okay, what's the plan? Because if we don't have the plan, it doesn't happen. And so if you get on the medication, they're probably just going to keep renewing that medication as long as your blood marker goes where it's supposed to go. Okay, good.
Hmm.
Blood pressure's down. Perfect. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep taking that
Yeah.
pill.
Yeah.
Um,
They feel like it's working. Yes.
and we do. We feel like that's treatment, right? But it's not
Hmm.
treatment. It's symptom covering.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this one's a big one, and I think one of the reasons that this one hits me so hard is that I remember visiting my grandfather, and he loved golf. I can't even tell you, he loved golf more than people. And so I would come visit, but we'd have lunch at the country club, and then all the guys would go get in the golf carts and go play golf. I wasn't much of a golfer, and so I didn't. And my uncle, nephew, and my grandfather were so good. It's like there's no way they don't want me anywhere near them on the course, because I would embarrass them. But that said, that whole side of the family just loved golf. It was huge in their lives. One visit I was there, he was 80, and he's in the golf cart, and we drive over, and he doesn't get out of the golf cart. And so I asked him, I said, "What's up?" And he says, "Well, I can't play anymore. I
Aw.
don't have the balance." And I said, "Well, do you want to go to the driving range and work on swings? Just do some swings." And he said, "No, I can't do it."
Hmm.
And so he had to quit the thing he loved the most
Mm-hmm.
because his balance wasn't there.
Mm.
And that he said balance, because that was the word that came to, and I'm like, well, it's strength, it's a lot of things, probably mobility and balance, yes. But you brought up something, because the myth we're talking about here is that instability comes with age, and I think a lot of people give up their games, their fun, and then there's the quote by Bernard Shaw, um, which is, we don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing. And I
Yes,
would
I
say
love that.
that's partially true. We
Hmm.
usually stop playing because we lose the capacity to play, because we're not
Mm.
maintaining our strength, our balance, and the other things. And that's why we end up giving it up, or there's an injury because we're just not capable of doing the thing
Hmm.
anymore, or it's overuse, or a lot of different reasons. But then we do feel old, because at that point, okay, I'm at that age, and we all know, we've heard, okay, that's the age you have to quit. Um, you know, I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't quit playing tackle football until I was 41 years old, um, because I didn't want to, and I could still play. But um, you brought up something I think that's really important in the book: the difference between balance and stability.
Mm. Yes. Yes. So, and it's kind of, I don't know, I don't want to use the word nitpicking, but I think we need to clarify the words so that we can understand the plan that we need to devise
Yeah,
to address it. I love how you're plan oriented, because that's true. If you don't have a plan, you're right, you're going nowhere. So, and I create plans of care when I work with people in a clinic setting, or when I consult with them, we have plans. So, balance is your ability to maintain a position. So, in other words, can I pick up a foot and can I count to 10 seconds? And it's interesting how the objective tests that have been created for people to know that they're relatively okay. If you can pick up your foot and count to 10, you're considered okay if you're a certain age. And I find that interesting because I do a lot of online events. They're all free. I've been done like 37 of them since August of 2020. But I've asked at these events, and they're all pretty much aimed at aging. Okay, everybody, let's try this. Pick up your foot. Don't put yourself at risk. If you think you're going to fall, don't do it. Stand next to something. Have somebody hold on to you. Whatever you need to do to be safe. But let's see how long we can hold our foot up. And pretty much everybody that was there, except for a few people, did it for over 30 seconds, and some of them for a full minute. So why is it that we think 10 seconds means we're okay? I mean, if you have to put your foot down after 10 seconds, you're in trouble. There's something going on there. But that's balance. Now, stability is your ability to regain your balance once it's been disrupted. And so what I mean by that is, say an older person in a crowd gets bumped into. Can they regain their position and stay upright and not fall down? That's stability. And that's really what we want to make sure we don't lose or regain if it has declined. And you can regain it. It all has to do with your proprioceptors, your muscles. Strength obviously is involved. Mobility and range of motion in joints is also crucial, because a lot of the times as people get older, their ankles kind of stiffen, and it's not because of age, it's because they've lessened what they're doing. They're a lot more sedentary. They've decided, oh, I'm getting older, so I guess I can't do that anymore. All that mindset stuff. But if the ankles stiffen, a lot of people have a history of an ankle injury, whether it was in sports when they were younger, college, whatever, and they've never regained that really good function in the ankles. So if your ankles don't have the right motion, and I won't go into all the technical details, it can kind of push you backward a little bit. And if it pushes you backward a little bit, what happens? Your upper body comes forward. So now your center of gravity doesn't line up with your base of support, and you're at risk of losing your balance, of not being stable. And it's because of ankle function. So it's so important to understand how everything's connected, and it's not because you're 65, or you're 82, That's not true.
Well, I thought it was interesting. You got into real estate, and we're talking. You're
Yeah.
talking about buying houses, and how there's a market for um, age at home housing, which is just where there's no steps at all.
Yeah.
And I was thinking it was so funny because I had a house in Arkansas, and it was huge. My girlfriend and I bought the house, and then it just when we broke up, I was like, okay, I don't need a 5,100 square foot house. I'm living in 1,500 of it. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I was like, I'm gonna sell this and get an apartment. I told my boss, don't worry, I'm not leaving. That house is too much for me. I get home from a trip because I travel a lot for work. If a light bulb's out, I just go to another part of the house and grab a light bulb because I never use that part of the house. And I said, I'm down to the point where now all the light bulbs in all the other parts of the house are gone. They're all in this little space that I'm in. So I do have to buy light bulbs next time a light bulb's out. But I don't need this much space. And so I did sell it. And the person I sold it to, that was exactly why they bought the house, was there were no steps. It was
Mm.
5,100 square feet, but there were no steps. They wanted a big house,
Wow.
but they didn't want the steps. Um,
Yeah.
and I had a client she was in her late 70s, and she had steps, and there was a period of time when she was really struggling with them. And so, yeah, we were working on her leg strength and ankle mobility, and just basically so she had what she needed. And she's also vision impaired, so that didn't help because she couldn't use line of sight for
Hmm.
part of this, because
Hmm.
that's part of it. um,
Right.
but it was just interesting to me that we we look for shortcuts rather than solutions to the root
Yes.
cause. And this is another
Yeah.
one of those situations like, oh, well, we just need a smaller, different house. We just need,
Hmm.
rails. We need these things. And we
Yeah.
don't think about, okay, what could we do so maybe we don't need rails all over the house. And, we don't need to sell the house you know, that our kids were born in and grew up in, and, because it's got stairs. Those
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
and those stairs, that's exercise. That's movement that you now don't do at all because
Absolutely.
you believe you shouldn't be doing it. And
Yes, yes. And I've had people tell me, so the two biggest problems with that whole scenario is, one, it's the mindset that you are expecting to decline. So you want to be able to age in place and not have to move. So you're expecting decline. That mindset is huge. It creates every activity and action we take. And then the other is, I've had many people report to me that their neighbor or a family member or somebody they knew who lived in a place with stairs, when they moved someplace that didn't have stairs, that person declined so rapidly that within 3 months they needed a lift chair because they couldn't get up without help, because they no longer had stairs to keep them mobile. So, yeah, we need stairs.
Yeah. We don't need a lift chair. We got to get
Yeah.
leg strength, and that's something that's trainable. Um, I think one concept that I would be remiss if I did not bring this up before we got off of this podcast was, and I don't know if this was one of the myths or just something, but it was in there several times, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is one of those take home messages that even if you're repeating yourself and your editor says, I want you to cut more, you don't cut this, because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is it. Is we tend to think these things are age related problems, but you're saying they're not.
No. No. It's not based on human biology that, oh, my cells are just going to start doing all this as I get older. When I hit 50, my cells will do this, and when I hit 60, my cells will do that. And that's not accurate. It is truly, and I've done deep dives into the research, into the data. I don't want people to think it's just my opinion. And I've done deep dives into age-related lean muscle loss. And every single study I read, now I'm not saying I read every study, because there are, probably would
Yeah.
take me 6 months to read all the studies, but I did a deep dive into them, and I could not find one study that didn't say this. Even if the title of the study was age-related lean muscle loss, always somewhere in the body of the content, it would say that it was because these people were not moving. They were sedentary. And there was also tons of data that showed people who stayed active in their 80s did not lose lean muscle loss or lean muscle mass. So again, we blame it on age. Why do we call it age related? It's time related, it's activity related, it's lifestyle related, but it has nothing to do with age.
Well, I think that's the core of it. It's okay. So it's one thing if you have a piece of cake, um, for dessert, and you do that when you're in your 20s, and your body is fine with it, and your blood sugar spikes up and comes back down, and that those spikes just keep happening. So you end up with diabetes. And just as diabetes at one time was called adult onset diabetes, and then kids started getting it, um, it's because the
Yeah, it
amount of
wasn't
sugar,
juvenile diabetes.
the amount
Yeah.
of sugar they were subjected to sped up the process. And so it really is at how long have you been like this? How long have you not been moving? Um,
Right.
and
Time related.
yeah, so it's
Yes.
time related, so it's really just a function of saying, okay, it's yes, being older means you had more time to do bad things to your body, but it also means you still have time to do good things for your body.
That's the best part about all of this. The human body is designed so amazing that it will respond. When you do the right things the right way, it's shocking how much better people can get. And I've seen it over and over and over. Yes.
Eileen, I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are three strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
Mm. Well, a lot of that kind of depends on the person and what's going on in their world. But if I was to give general statement to that, I would say one of the best things you can do is to surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who, if you're trying to go against all odds, the substition thing, if everybody around you doesn't believe what's true, you're going to struggle because you're not going to have support. You can't be a lone wolf. You really need to have people around you who know the truth as well, so they can support you. And a lot of the times other people have great suggestions when you're challenged and you didn't think of that. So it can help with your planning. So being surrounded with like-minded people is really important. And then I think one of the other things is if we stress to do everything perfect, some people don't take a step forward because they feel like they've got to have all their ducks in a row. You know, they're getting ready to get ready to get ready to get ready to get ready, and they're never doing anything. And so just start. Just do one simple thing each day. Drink more water, eat more fruit, have a salad, start taking a walk, even if you just walk around your house. Just get started. Don't wait to get ready to get started. That's huge. And then I think the last thing is don't try to be perfect. I mean, I have found I've worked with many, many people with private consulting and that, and they feel like they have to be perfect about everything. And they're the most anxious, lack of peace people I've ever met because they're so worried about getting everything perfect. And that puts us into that sympathetic nervous system overdrive of running from the bear. And so now we've got this cortisol surge that's destroying our short-term memory and creating fat in our trunk. And that's not a way to live. So don't try to be perfect. Just get started, do something, and then surround yourself with people who want the same things you do. It makes a big difference.
Thank you. So, Eileen, if someone wanted to learn more about you, learn more about your book, Aging Culprits, where would you like for me to send them?
Yes, well, the book itself does have a website, which does have ways to contact me and check out other things. But my main website is specially designed for people to answer 5 very simple questions, and then it will aim them to the resources that will best meet their concerns, their needs, because I do have a lot of online content. And that website is kind of a long handle. It's havelifelongwellbeing.com, and that will aim them where they'll find the help they need.
Great. Eileen, thank you for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's show, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you would, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Dr. Nitin Yerham and discuss kidney cancer. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.